Hello and welcome back to Pod Fiction. I'm your host Joshua Kill, and with me today is my co-host Ethan.
Buongiorno.
Today we'll be talking about the Aesthetica Short Film Festival in York, England. Both Ethan and I went to different viewings and watched different films. So Ethan, what did you say at the festival?
I saw the thrillers, and oh boy, were they a mixed bag. Top three. Now these aren't my top three favourites, these are the top three most interesting, okay? So, the first movie we watched was called Wall-E, and it was the best one there by far, and it was a short film about a young black teenager who just got out of a youth prison, and he was going around saying he's a mechanic, looking for a job. And this one guy, he's like, "Oh yeah, come round to my house tonight." So he goes round to his house to fix his car, and he has a bit of a beer, cuts up a lime, puts the lime in his beer, and then he's like, "Okay, cool." So he gets in his car, drives off, all consensual, nothing bad. Gets to the garage, opens up the boot. The guy killed his wife and put his wife in the boot. So then our main character, Wall-E, was like, "Oh heck." So he drove back to the guy's house and punched him, and the guy was like, "Aha, you just fell right for my trap, because now it looks like you killed my wife." And it was honestly one of those things where it was a perfect thriller because you could self-insert yourself so hard. And it was like, what would I do in that situation, And then it ended with he was driving out into the middle of nowhere to go dump her body. And then as he takes her out of the boot, she starts coughing and really she's alive. And it's like, wow, okay, it was such an emotional roller coaster. It was such a good story. Oh my gosh. It was the best thriller there by far. The rest was there was another one called Ovum, and I was really looking forward to this one, the Egg movie, by an Argentinian director, and it was about an egg on a beach, and that's pretty thrilling if you're asking me. So this fisherman was on the beach, and really good visuals, by the way. That's what I liked about this one. Just really good visuals. The actor they got to play the fisherman looked like a perfect fisherman, dirty face, nice big beard and all that. Really bad sunburn as well, which it's just the little touches. So he was on this beach and he finds this huge egg, and it's like, oh, what's in the egg? That's what everyone wanted to know, was what was in this giant egg. So then he takes the egg, puts it in his little garage, and then it starts to hatch. And we don't really find out what it is. It's assumed it's a mermaid, but we don't really find out what it is, and then the guy gets naked and runs into the sea to chase after it.
Was there any meaning to this film? Because to me it just seems like an egg. You described it to me the other day, and I kind of just went, "What? What is this?"
I don't know. It didn't seem like, because there was no speech, there was no dialogue. It was a silent movie. Weren't even much music. It was all like.
How long was it?
About. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it wasn't a long thing. It was probably about maybe 10 minutes at most, if I can recall. And it just ended with, you saw a tail in the ocean, and it was it was assumed it was a mermaid, because then it panned to a steel sign of a mermaid that he had off the side of his house. And it was it's probably a mermaid, but we don't really know. And it was just so deflating, because what's in the egg? And you don't really find out. And it's not really a thriller either, because it's not thrilling, because it's he was in no danger whatsoever. Oh no, I think at one point the egg growled, and he fell over and hit his head when the egg started to hatch, and everyone thought he's going to die, he's going to get eaten by the sea monster. But no, they just sort of crawled back into the ocean. Was a bit terrible. It's just.
Maybe it's a case of literally what's in the case, like in Pulp Fiction. It's does it really matter what's in the egg? It's
Yeah, but I think Pulp Fiction, that sort of got around it because it wasn't just about the case. If Tarantino called the film The Case, and the whole movie was about this case and how it's being really mysterious. No dialogue, no music, it's just a guy and a case. And then just as he's about to open it at the end, it falls off a table and you don't see it and it's over.
That does sound a little deflating, to be fair.
It's like there was no speech. The most music we got was when he turned on a radio and it went and interfered because of the egg. And it's literally called ovum, which is like egg in Latin. So the whole thing was about this egg, and it just generally got me upset. I was really looking forward to see what was in the egg. I thought inside the egg was going to be an alien, but it just wasn't. It was. We think it was just deflating and boring.
Despite you saying it was deflating and boring, I kind of wish I was there to see it, because it's like I can't get my head around this film. I think I have needed to see it to get my head around it. But yeah, did you see anything else at the festival?
The final one I'm going to be talking about is it's another not terrible one, but it was just slightly weird, and no one could really get their head around it. I couldn't, and the people I spoke to couldn't. So it had popular Irish comedian Aisling B in it, you know, the 8 out of 10 Cats girl. And then, so it was about like her husband, and then it sort of showed her husband was in a cycle of sort of killing himself, but he was two different people. And it was strange because he played two different characters, and it starts off from like one point of view of him, like running along, and he sees a guy with a knife, but then later on we find out the guy with the knife is him. And then at the end we find out he's killed himself plenty of times, and it's just like just the one thing that always gets me about this movie is he tuned into 666 radio and was just like, it was just strange. I think they were going for, it was called Be Uncertain, and it ended with him, because he lived in this van, and he opened up this van and it said, go anywhere, be uncertain. So what I think the director was trying to put across is this man is stuck in sort of like a hell purgatory thing, where because he's so comfortable with his life, he has to break the cycle and be uncertain about something. But then him killing himself didn't make him uncertain, which I think might be some deep political, like some deep commentary on ourselves. You know, like he lacked so much love for himself that he wouldn't be uncertain killing himself.
Would you say that film kind of went over your head a little bit? Like just you describing it's gone over my head. I don't understand the concept of it at all. And again, I think if I was there and watched it, I might have understood it a bit more. But to me, it's kind of one of those films where it's so experimental and kind of out there that it's like, to a normie like me, I just can't make any sense of it.
I think maybe, but I also think it was just maybe time constraint, because there was no real speech about what situation he was in. Like, I think at one point he just sort of shouted into everywhere, like, "Oh, what do I have to do, grr?" I don't know. Maybe it did go over my head, but it's one of those things I'll need to rewatch. But it's because it's like a short film, I probably won't be able to get the opportunity to. So, pretty sad. But what did you watch at Aesthetica?
Well, I went to see the fashion films, because why not, I guess. And I saw quite a lot, because they're quite short films, so they put a lot of them in the showings. So I think in total I saw about 11 or 12 3 to 4 minute films. Most of them followed some kind of narrative, because the difference between fashion film and advertisements is like they're trying to sell the clothes and the wardrobe used in the film, but they don't shove it in your face. So it's not like branded with Adidas written everywhere. That said, there was one film which pretty much did that. Every clothing in the film was like Adidas. So there were a few generic kind of advertisements in there, but most of them that I kind of earned to and liked were the narrative kind of story ones. There were also a couple of documentaries in there about fashion and brands and stuff like that. But one of my favourites was called Sleep, directed by Michael Green. It was a short film. Are you okay there? It was a short film exploring human connectivity through sleep. And it was about 5 chapters or so, and followed this kind of what we assume to be a couple. So that it starts out like they're in bed together, like just kind of like generic couple stuff, really. But throughout the chapters, it kind of changes. They hit their peak, but then it goes sour at the end, I'd say. And I don't think it's presented as a reality thing. I think it's kind of a dream, because the female character in this short film opened up by reading a bit from a book, which makes me think this is fiction. This is not happening in real life. Not only that, but the cinematography is kind of slightly overexposed, and so it gives this really like dream kind of feel to it, almost as if like in heaven or something. So it's kind of like you get these feelings of, oh, it's love and lust. There's a lot of red used in this film, like through the clothing and the set design. It was very red, which to me signifies love, lust, hate, anger, stuff like that. All things you find in a relationship. So it's just this film showing the ups and downs of a relationship through their dreams. That's what I understood it as. There's also Diagonals. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's Argentinian. And it's a short narrative film about, again, human connectivity and building relationships, which is kind of a common theme in these fashion films. It's like the clothes you wear can get you closer to other people, I'm guessing. And it frequently included mirrors and reflections. And I think half this is down to the director. The director has tended to use lots of reflections in his work before. But also I think with the story, it really works. Like, there's a scene in it, well, most of the film actually, where the characters, again, it's a male and a female, and they're walking around aimlessly with a mirror in front of them, and they're always looking in the mirror at themselves. Like, it's just like self-obsession overload. So they're always looking at themselves, looking beautiful in their nice clothes and their makeup. But they never interact with each other until about 3/4 of the way through the film, where the two characters literally bump into each other. And from remembrance, I remember that they put down the mirrors, and then they actually connect and bond. And I think that conveys quite a strong message of like, stop being so self-obsessed, and actually go out and form and connect with people. But then at the end of that, the two characters become closer. There's a lot more scenes where they're physically put nearer each other. And then they also start wearing similar colours and clothes. And again, I think a lot of red is used. So red clothes, and they're physically closer together. I also watched Casmarati, which was a short film advertising a perfume brand. And it wasn't, again, a generic advertisement. It wasn't, boom, look at our perfume, it'll make you smell nice, kind of thing. It was a narrative, and it followed this woman who was at a ball. She was like dressed up, and then she weirdly goes into a mirror, and it kind of dissolves, and she ends up in a bigger ball, like more elaborate, and you assume that it's in the past because of the set design and the clothing. It looked like Victorian or Edwardian, and she's there walking around. She looks like a lot more elaborate than she did in the present. So to me, that's just like the perfume makes you feel nostalgic and younger, and it takes you back when you wear it. And I think the set design again and the costume in this film was amazing, because without that you won't get that sense of wearing our perfume makes you feel younger, blah blah blah. And it just seemed really lavish and luxurious, which represents the brand, I think.
So throughout the film, did they actually show people applying the perfume, or the actual perfume bottle itself, or have any mention of perfume, or is it just one of those things where when you do further research, you're like, oh, it was a perfume advert, or was there maybe an ident at the end or anything?
In the actual film, they never mentioned it once. And I personally didn't get it until the end, until the ident came up going, oh, it's a perfume brand. And I think that's better in a way than just going perfume, like Link's body spray or something. It's just a nicer way because you get drawn into the story, and you're, as an audience, you're there going, what is this trying to tell me? What's the meaning here? And sometimes you won't get it right until the end, but as long as it looks good and you get drawn into it, which this one did, it looked so elaborate. And I think, to me, I'd more rather watch that, even though it's a bit more hard to understand and it takes some time to think, what is this, than a 30-second advert on YouTube.
I think that just goes to sort of talk about how, advertising, it could really take a highbrow thing. Like you said, you'd much rather watch a short film about, a lot of symbolism, going back in time, and then just with the perfume at the end, rather than a 30-second advert. But I think that just speaks wonders about how, they're just trying to appeal to obviously everyone, and everyone can understand, a one sheet does plenty. It's just simple, which I guess it's just for a brand. But do you think that maybe those films would be a good alternative to standard adverts, or do you think that they're good standalone, but they wouldn't be able to fit in on regular advertising space on maybe TV or anything like that?
I think that they're too long to be on a YouTube advert and stuff like that, and I think this kind of advertising needs to be, or would work best, on the brand's website. And I also think that it's quite luxurious brands that seem to be doing this. Instead of just your generic brand, it's always a really nice perfume brand or a really unique jean brand. I've seen a few videos from this jean brand, and they're it's more luxurious than kind of unique brands that are doing this, which is nice because it's if you're looking at that brand, you'll watch their videos. Whereas if just some generic brand tries to make this 10-minute long video, it's just a bit why are they doing this? They should kind of stick with the norm.
Well, I see you've got a lot of stuff written down just to finish it off, so I'm just going to talk about the one last thriller I saw called Eve. And it was the most fun to watch by far, because as much as Wale was good, Wale was it was quite thrilling, it had you at times, but Eve was just the most fun and chilled out to watch. It was quite a funny one, South Korean, about a nerdy dude who programs let's just call it a love bot, and he programs this love bot to have thoughts and feelings. But then the film opened with a guy leant against a wall with bullet holes all over him, and he sort of wakes up and has this flashback, and he's oh, that's a bit strange, because it didn't really connect to the main story. But later on we find out that man was sent back from the future because this love bot takes over the world. And it seems stupid, but then in execution it's just a fun movie, and the set design was great. Literally in the first 10 seconds you could establish what the relationship was between the robot and the guy, because it showed all his little Marvel figurines, and he was quite a large man, laid in bed, and he was and he would do things like lean in to kiss her and stuff like that. Just the characterization of each character, and the girl who played the robot, what an amazing performance. Honestly, she did act like a robot. There was points where he had a power button on the back. She had a power button on the back of her neck, and whenever he pressed it, she would power down, and it was the same motion every single time, and it was honestly really scary. So I just wanted to put that little review in for Eve. So now let you finish off with something you found on the Aesthetica website.
Thank you. And yeah, basically during my research for the previously mentioned videos, I went onto the Aesthetica website, and there was a video on here. I think it might have been from this year or last year, but it just stuck out to me on the website, and it's another fashion film, and it's called the Fermi Paradox, and it followed a couple of people wearing these out of worldly clothes, and it was just weird to me. And I watched it, I was like, that went over my head. I didn't get that. So I decided, let's do more research into this, because why not? So I found myself in this massive like research hole, and I was like, I started off, what is the Fermi Paradox? Like, because I didn't know what it was, and I thought if I Googled that, done some research into that, it would make me understand this film a bit better. So I Googled it, and it's basically like, it's the contrast and contradiction between the high probability but lack of examples and evidence to extraterrestrial life. I was like, what's this got to do with a fashion film? This is crazy. This is more sci-fi. So I rewatched the fashion film, and I understood it better, because the clothes were, like I said, out of worldly. There's this one that literally looked like it could have been a spacesuit. And then there's these also bright orange shoes that are just like, I've never seen anything like that before. So, and then there's also the music in it. In the first view, I'm just like, it's just some generic music, but it's so slow, and it sounds like a being from a sci-fi film. It's like, it's just otherworldly, and it really now kind of makes sense after doing the research into the Fermi Paradox, why it's called that and its significance in this film. And then they also use a lot of slow motion cinematography, where there's a scene where there's one of the characters or models, I won't know what to say, laying in water, and they're kind of moving around, and it's dripping off them so slowly. And because the music's quite slow, it's in time, and it's, because obviously it's slow motion, we don't see in slow motion, it's just not right, but in a good way, which is like, I think what they're trying to go for here, they're advertising it as our clothes are out there, like, so different from anything, we're unique, basically, and that comes across in the video because of this, like, otherworldly nature to it. And I just kind of spent a few hours looking at that and was like, mind blown.
Yeah, that, like, just you talking about it, you can tell that you're very interested in the topic, and the fact you did further research into the whole Fermi Paradox. But I think it just comes down to, like, art doesn't need to be understood to be appreciated, and I think, like, I'm quite bad for that, you know. I'm always looking for logic in places where logic shouldn't be, you know. So I think that's what Aesthetica taught me, that sometimes it doesn't need to be understood. Sometimes it can just be a weird movie about an egg, and that maybe it shouldn't leave me disappointed, because I just got to appreciate it for what it is. I shouldn't be going, well, what could it have been? No, you need to appreciate it for what it is. That's what I learned from Aesthetica. So I'm just going to let you sign off now, little Joshua Keel.
Well, I completely agree, because I went to fashion film and I'd never seen fashion film before, and for most of it they went over my head. But after doing a bit more research, they made more sense to me. I'm like, I now get that, and I'm like, these films may not appeal to everyone. People may be like, what was that? What did I just see? But then either if you do some research into it, or if you just like that kind of thing anyway, some people will just go, that was amazing, that was work of art. Like, there was this one film that I saw, it was a kind of a looping GIF, and I personally didn't get it. The people I were with didn't get it, but there must have been someone in that audience who went, perfect, this is just art, this is amazing. And I think that's something so good about art, that people can interpret it in their own way, and it just says different things to different people. But anyway, this was the Pulp Fiction, and I've been Joshua Keel.
And I've been Ethan Azart.
We'll see you next time for the second episode of the Aesthetica Special.
The second episode of the Aesthetica Special, where we go around interviewing some other people on what they saw, and we'll resume next week where we go back to films, and we're looking at the film Kids, which I heard is going to be one hell of a film. So stay tuned for the next Aesthetica Part 2 episode.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And now it's all over. We've paid your money, we've taken your choice. And I know we'll never meet again. But Deborah, I just wanted you to